No one expected it. In a courtroom where silence and solemnity usually dominate, a single moment shattered expectations. Justice Stephen Breyer, one of the most respected voices of the Supreme Court, broke tradition. Instead of challenging, instead of dismissing, he did something almost unthinkable. He praised, and not just anyone. He praised Representative Jasmine Crockett, the fiery new voice in American politics, known for her fearless arguments and razor-sharp legal mind. The man who had spent decades at the pinnacle of American law stopped everything to acknowledge the brilliance of a Congresswoman many elites had underestimated. But the real shock came not from Breyer's words, but from Crockett's reaction. Because in that moment, her response didn't just stun the court. It revealed something deeper about the clash between generations, about respect, and about the rising power of truth spoken fearlessly. If you've ever felt that the system silences those who challenge it, this story will show you what happens when even the highest court cannot ignore brilliance. What happened next shocked everyone in the room. To understand why this moment mattered, you have to know the players. Justice Stephen Breyer. For decades, Breyer was known as the intellectual anchor of the court's liberal wing. Calm, methodical, and pragmatic, he avoided political showmanship. His reputation was built on careful reasoning, deep respect for institutions, and a constant search for consensus. Even those who disagreed with his opinions acknowledged his sharp mind and thoughtful style. Breyer was the kind of justice who rarely spoke casually. When he chose to speak, it carried weight. And then there's Jasmine Crockett. Before Congress, Crockett was an attorney who battled in Texas courtrooms, defending ordinary people against powerful systems. Her legal career hardened her instincts and sharpened her tongue. Unlike many politicians, Crockett doesn't water down her words. She strikes, she challenges, she disrupts. When she entered Congress, critics dismissed her as too brash, too outspoken. But slowly, her courtroom training began to shine. In committee hearings, she dismantled hypocrisy. On the House floor, she exposed contradictions. And with every confrontation, she gained followers who saw her not just as a politician, but as a fighter. So why did it matter that Justice Breyer praised her? Because for decades, the unspoken wall between the Supreme Court and Congress has been one of power and hierarchy. Justices rarely show public deference to politicians. Their authority is supposed to tower above the partisan arena. For Breyer, the elder statesman of law, to openly acknowledge Crockett's brilliance was not just unusual, it was groundbreaking. And it didn't happen in a back room. It happened in front of cameras, witnesses, and history itself. The day began as many hearings do, tense, procedural, and layered with anticipation. Crockett had prepared meticulously, armed with case law, constitutional principles, and her trademark, directness. She wasn't there to perform, she was there to press real questions. As she began speaking, observers noticed the sharpness of her reasoning. Unlike many politicians who wander in circles, Crockett cut straight to the point. She cited precedents, quoted opinions, and framed contradictions in the simplest, most devastating terms. Every sentence landed like a precise legal strike, and across the room, Justice Breyer watched. At first, he listened quietly, hands folded, his expression calm, but then something shifted. Breyer leaned forward. His eyes narrowed, not in disapproval, but in concentration. The more Crockett spoke, the more the atmosphere changed. What began as routine testimony began to feel different. There was a charge in the air. Crockett wasn't grandstanding. She was dismantling assumptions, weaving arguments so sharp that even seasoned attorneys in the room took note. Spectators whispered. Reporters scribbled furiously. Even those who came prepared to dismiss her found themselves paying attention. And then, it happened. Crockett laid out one final argument, drawing on constitutional text and modern implications, tying together decades of case law into one piercing conclusion. It was the kind of reasoning many expected from a justice, not a congresswoman. The room fell silent. Breyer, who had been listening without interruption, finally spoke. "Congresswoman," Breyer said, his voice steady, carrying the authority. "Of decades on the court, that was one of the most brilliant arguments I've heard in this chamber." The words hung in the air like a thunderclap. Gasps echoed through the courtroom. Spectators turned to each other in disbelief. A Supreme Court justice had just done the unthinkable, offering open public praise to a sitting congresswoman in front of the nation. Crockett froze for half a second, the weight of the moment sinking in. And then she responded, not with pride, not with arrogance, but with something deeper. Her voice was firm, resonant, carrying both gratitude and defiance. "Justice Breyer," she said, "I appreciate your words. But brilliance isn't mine alone. It belongs to the people, whose voices I carry into this room. If I speak sharply, it is because they've been silenced for too long." The room erupted in a silence so thick it felt physical. Even seasoned politicians shifted in their seats. Breyer nodded slowly, his expression one of respect. Her response turned his praise into something larger than herself. She redirected the spotlight away from her own achievement and back onto the principles she fought for, truth spoken on behalf of the unheard. And in that moment, Jasmine Crockett wasn't just a congresswoman. She was the embodiment of the people's voice, rising in the halls of power. Her reaction stunned the court, not because it was emotional, but because it was principled. She had turned a rare moment of recognition into a rallying cry for accountability and courage. Clips of the exchange spread within hours. Social media exploded with commentary. Did you hear what Breyer said? Did you see how Crockett responded? It wasn't just a courtroom moment anymore. It was a cultural moment. And for once, the clash of generations wasn't hostile. It was transformative. This moment between Breyer and Crockett carried a meaning far beyond one hearing. It was a symbolic passing of the torch. On one side, Breyer, the elder justice who had spent decades upholding the institution of law. On the other, Crockett, the fiery newcomer, unafraid to challenge, unafraid to speak the truth. Their exchange reminded the nation that brilliance isn't confined to the bench, that respect can cross boundaries of power and generation, and that, when truth is spoken with courage, even the highest authorities must acknowledge it. For every citizen who has felt voiceless, this moment mattered. It proved that institutions can still be moved, not by deference, but by fearless integrity. So let me ask you, what do you think this moment means for the future of American politics and law? Was this simply a rare acknowledgement, or was it the start of something bigger? A recognition that fearless voices like Jasmine Crockett's are reshaping the very institutions of power? If you believe brilliance must always be recognized, even in the halls of the highest courts, then tap that like button. If you think Crockett's reaction shows the strength of a true leader, drop a comment below. I want to hear your take. Did her words give you hope? And if you want more breakdowns of political legal showdowns, the kind of confrontations that reveal the truth and shock the establishment, then make sure you subscribe. Because here, we don't just cover the news, we uncover the battles for power, truth, and accountability. Until next time, stay vigilant, stay critical, and never underestimate the power of one fearless voice.